Hey yo, hello everybody. Welcome back to another stream with Specialist Feature. Today we are going to be doing a bit of reading. A little bit of reading. We put some nice song on. Welcome everybody. Don't mind the renovations happening in the office right now. We have a new paint job put on the walls and stuff, and got a few renovations happening, so place is a little bare bones at the moment. You'll have to forgive me on that. Today we're doing a reading. Now, this reading is kind of particular to me. It's not like a reading of like typical lore or anything like that. It's actually a story I've been writing up for a long time now. It started a long time ago. I got this idea for a fun story, and I thought to myself, well, hey, I want to get this out there. And how am I gonna do that? Well, I wrote down a doc. And I was like, hey guys, check out this doc I wrote. And then everyone I showed it to was like, Spec, this is really long. So I thought, you know, it'd be a good idea if I just make a stream. Everybody can chill out and listen to me talk and ramble about my story writing and stuff like that. So that's what we're here to do. Now, I have it right here. The Google Doc, I put it into the stream so we can read it as you can look at it as I read through. If you want a clue for how big this thing is, it has taken me a little while to write all of this, but it is quite a lot. We can just like, there's 43 pages. So, I don't know if we're gonna get through the whole thing today, but we're gonna get through some of it. Alright, well, why don't we just start off? I want to get my ideas out there. That's also a big reason why I'm doing this, because I want to get the ideas out there and just kind of make it official that these are like things I've been thinking of for a while. So yeah. One moment. Here we go, turn that down. Alright, starting off. I'm going to avoid trying to give established labels like underdog or villain here. These are all people and events that just happen. You can pick a side to back in the story. Also, some stuff may get revised a little eventually. It's just background info and a summary of everything that goes down. Further context can be added in a full episode script. As in, if I ever was to make this story real, I would love to make it like a TV show, or like an animation series or something like that. And to do that, you need to have scripts and stuff like that. So, more detail will be put in those scripts. There's a few big ideas of what people should take away from my stories. One thing I want to do with this is have a sort of basic character name like the soldier, the professional, the ronin, the specialist. This is because of one perspective I have in life, which is that it doesn't matter what people remember you or who you were. What matters is the impact you leave on others and your legacy, so to speak. Your actions will define you in your world, not your past, not your origin, not your destiny. The specialist is the narrative metaphorically and less of a person and more like a force of nature. Spec is trying his best to Spec is trying his best to become a good force of nature. It's not his exact goals in his mind, but narratively, the goal of leaving a positive impact on others and society is basically his story goal. This is how the story develops, starting from a somewhat selfish man and a destructive force of nature to someone who won't hesitate to put his life on the line to save another person, and he becomes a force of good. Alright, let's get down to some world building. My favorite thing with making a story is world building. I love making big, open worlds that people can just throw themselves into. I think it's a successful attempt of world building is if you can make a world and someone else could just make their own character and throw that in the world. I think it's like what do you call major success? If you can do that with your world, you did a good job. If they can't put their own character in there and imagine themselves in that world, you didn't do a good job. Alright, first, let's set down the foundation of the world we tell the story in. Universe is based on Destiny by Bungie, with many creative liberties or differences in how stuff functions for the sake of my own fun story. Nothing in this story should be considered canon alongside anything Bungie releases or any fan-made productions. Even if Spec appears in another YouTube channel via collabs or whatever. Basically, you know, I've had moments before where, you know, I have friends and we do fun stuff. And let's say, for example, Solar was like, hey, there's Spec in this animation. Look at him go. Make him. He's doing a little dance. Look at him go. Well, I mean, that's not what this story is. Anything that happens in those animations or stories are their own thing. This whole thing is completely separate. It's also separate from anything Bungie does from like a lot of their storytelling at this point on. Like they'll have, let's say in Lightfall, right? The last city gets torn to ashes and rubble and stuff like that, and it's just gone. That's not happening here. That's their own thing. They can do their own thing. I'm just telling a story based on that universe, so to speak. So we're also gonna have a few creative liberties. One of the creative liberties is there is enough powers, but they're classified a little differently. Okay? There's light techniques, which is their special ability, like Nova Bomb or Hammer of Soul. Alright? So let's say you have an elemental affinity, which is solar. You're more attuned with solar powers, right? You can cast fire. You're good with fire and stuff. Your light technique would be your most practiced move, the move you're the best at doing with solar. So like a Dawn Blade, that's your light technique. And why do I call it light technique and just a super instead of that? Well, I don't know, I just thought light technique was cool. But also, we're gonna have things more than just a Dawn Blade or a Golden Gun. They're gonna have things like, we could say, a solar lasso, or throwing explosives and stuff. Just like completely random abilities that stem from solar, arc, or void usually. We also aren't restricted to light, of course. I can also do this for like darkness abilities too, because you know it's a thing you can do. Guardians can wield the darkness, so maybe there's someone out there that can do a technique you couldn't even imagine, but it's related to the darkness. Mainly Risen will be good at one element, but weaker in other ones. So when I say you have like a arc affinity, that doesn't mean that you can't do solar or void abilities. It would just mean that they're best with arc, and they probably use arc mainly. Someone uses a Hammer of Soul for their light technique, they're probably having a solar affinity, because it wouldn't make sense to have a Hammer of Soul technique if they weren't attuned with solar. But the much more experienced or powerful Risen will have multiple affinities and or techniques. So let's say like Osiris, for example, right? He's like one of the strongest warlocks out there in Destiny, right? He would be able to use Arc or Void or Solar probably, and be pretty good with either of them. And he'd also probably have multiple supers, or in this case, light techniques. Moving on. The main story we'll be telling is going to take place a few years after the Red War, but everything that happens inside, but everything that ever happens includes events before Destiny 1 started. Risen exists all over the system. All Guardians are Risen, but not all Risen are Guardians. There are Warlords, and there are still people that live in communities across the solar system with different monikers for Risen. Some are well connected with the rest of humanity, and some are well isolated in their own little world. While there are some places settled across the galaxy, most well-known, largest, or most powerful place humanity resides is the last city on Earth. Ooh, here we go. We get to the juicy stuff now. Major timeline altercations. What I mean by that? Well, basically, this is where you can basically just call it fanfic, because we're going to be diverting from what you could say is the main story from Destiny 1 and 2, and we're having a few things that change. Some of this is already kind of similar to what already happened. Some of this is more out there. Okay. I'm going to start with the Golden Age. The year is 2044, and humanity has discovered strange readings out in space. We have developed technology capable of helping a trained team travel to Mars. The readings are clear enough to indicate some form of life growing at the exponential rate on Mars. This stuns scientists, and they decide to send an expeditionary team to Mars. The team consists of scientists and a few hired soldiers. When they reach Mars, they travel to the targeted coordinates, where studies found the most growth. This is where they discover the Traveler, a snow-white, gigantic sphere floating in the sky. Over the course of centuries, humanity is aided by the Traveler. Lifespans increase twofold. Technology reaches new heights to levels never before imagined, with intergalactic travel no longer just being a fantasy. Industries form on spaceships, large shuttles created for massive migrations to planets that are now hospitable thanks to this godlike entity. Many in humanity revere it, considering it an actual god that descended down to bring humanity to its greatest heights. One day, someone claimed they could converse with the traveler, a unique gift from their birth blessed by the light. When many doubted this man, he turned the doubt into astonishment as he performed miracles with the power of light, healing miracles, and the ability to grow food with the flick of the wrist. He adorned the title, the Speaker. He aged like any human, and over time grew old as a respected figure in humanity. He ensured his followers that when he left, a new speaker would be born. And he was right. Over the next many years, generations of the speaker arrived. Each incarnation was a different person, blessed by the traveler's light and used as a conduit between the traveler and its people. So they're different people, right? But they all have the power. I'm thinking it's going to either be like the Avatar state from Last Airbender, or they're just like maybe like Legend of Zelda, right? Where Link doesn't really have the memories of the previous Links or other games Links, but he's still basically the same person, you know? He's got the same role in the world. Humanity has settled amongst the stars, with colonies and civilizations across the solar system. Medicine has reached new heights, with just about every sickness being curable, and wounds considered fatal in the past can be treated in a night. Weapons have also become more deadly, however. Bullets are still a thing, with the calibers have become deadlier. And alternate sources for ammunition and firepower have arrived, such as liquid-cooled ammunition, founded by Amalon Industries, and AI-powered tools founded by Weist. Other industries also arose, such as Hake, Dido, and Suros. Amalon and Suros did more than weaponry, with their aesthetics leaking into many things seen and used in the colonies. Amalon at one point dipped into beverage industry, but was immediately attracted after. Let's just say they didn't make good drinks. One final note is there was an organization formed early on in the Golden Age. During the time research was happening on Mars, a team was being formed called the Ishtar Collective. This team would be comprised of scientists who took the helm of research into this mysterious force. The members that went to Mars were members of this team. When humanity grew, so did the team. It became heads of the scientific discovery in the solar system. The Ishtar Collective's main goal was the discovery and archiving of information, geography of the planets, medicinal advancement, new technology, scientific breakthroughs and theories, notable figures and events in history. All of these were recorded and archived in the various Ishtar Collective bases. But no good things last forever, right? The Dark Age comes. And in the Dark Age, as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. In the many stories featuring humanity as a whole, usually a civil war breaks out or some great calamity occurs like an earthquake or a meteor. But with the Traveler on Earth's side and the guidance of the Speaker, neither of these things were made possible. Sure, there was drama between nations, espionage, conspiracy, etc. And there was still crime, murder, etc. But the world was in a much better place. Then came the anomaly. On the moon, orbiting Earth. Moon. Very creative name. Scientists from the Ishtar Collective were investigating a strange new discovery. Meteor showers weren't the rarest thing, but it was always nice to research them and see if anything neat can be found from things landing on planets or moons from the space. This time, however, they found something totally unique. They hadn't discovered readings like this since the start of the Golden Age. Scientists were absolutely thrilled, thinking they just made the discovery of a grand millennia just like their predecessors. It became their mission to investigate this strange thing that crashed into their moon. A research facility was built around this anomaly, and a full team of researchers were stationed there to learn about whatever they can about this. Unlike the Traveler, this was much more angular-shaped and a lot smaller. It was also seemingly dormant, but readings matched what they found in the Traveler, so they were confident they found something really unique. After the first few weeks of research and experimentation, a breakthrough was made. The Speaker arrives to the site and the anomaly reacts to her. It opens up somewhat, showing yellow lights. The scientists are astonished and begin to record whatever they see, whatever they can. The Speaker, however, becomes very distressed. She dislikes whatever the anomaly is doing very much and demands that they shut it all down. They refuse, and she leaves upset. Over the next few months, stress begins to build in the station, not the nation. Workers are feeling worse, everyone's getting headaches, and people swear they're hearing voices. One scientist in particular, the director of communications, thinks he's being given instructions. Things start to get really bad, with paranoia and insanity starting to emerge and people begin to fight each other. One scientist attacks the director, claiming he's been going to kill them all, and eventually chaos becomes too large to contain. Scientists are killed, and hunts begin for certain members. The director manages to become the last survivor, and in his crazed, desperate state, listens to the voices in his head. He activates something in the anomaly, sending out a massive signal to the far reaches of space. He is in very poor condition when suddenly darkness envelops him. He screams and is whisked away through a window into some dark realm. There comes the collapse. Word gets out about what happened in this station. The speaker declares that something has been made aware of their solar system, something that has been searching for a long time for the traveler. She believes that whatever it is, it must not be coming with pure intentions. The entire solar system prepares to defend their home. The Ishtar Collective works double time in archiving information in bunkers, while the industries work on their deadliest weapons yet. Clovis Bray, a brilliant scientist leading the tech world in innovations such as robot assistants and exohumans, human souls inhabiting robot bodies, and completes his deadliest creation, the solar system's most powerful weapon, Rasputin. A supercomputer with the best tactical and strategic sense, and an army ranging from orbital lasers to planet busters. Readings from scientists monitoring anything approaching their system from the far edges of space have discovered something coming. The whole of humanity prepares for the worst. Unfortunately, what arrives was beyond what any of them could have prepared for. Now, what is referred to as the darkness swept over the system in a shroud of destruction and despair. The entirety of Earth was covered in flames for 7 days. Colonies from other planets were utterly decimated, with only a few left in recognizable ruins. Colony ships attempting to flee were struck down and decimated by the darkness. There were no records of any surviving escape shuttles. About 80% of humanity was wiped out. The speaker pleaded to the traveler to do something, and so the traveler did. It left Earth's atmosphere and confronted the darkness head-on. In a grand display of light, it repelled the darkness. However, the god did not leave the battle unscathed. It returned to Earth in a very damaged state and became quiet. Not even the speaker could hear what it had to say anymore, and so the traveler remained dormant from then on. Before it went dormant, it let out one last act. Little beings came from the traveler, and over time, they would revive a few selected from the dead. These beings, ghosts of the dead god, would find humans that are in some ways chosen by them and revive them. These risen would possess powers of light, like the speaker. However, these powers were much more attuned to the forces of the galaxy, the void, arc, and solar powers, with a much more destructive capability. And also, these risen had no memory of who they once were. Humanity, what was left of it, united under the dead god and built what we know as the Last City. Risen that stayed with them became their guardians. The ones that didn't find life elsewhere in the system, the ones that didn't stay in the Last City, found life elsewhere in the system, such as warlords or something else, like mercenaries. Not everyone flocked to the Last City. Other much smaller settlements rose around Earth. However, the Last City is like the big city. Like that's pretty much bastion of humanity. Everything else is just like little villages or towns, like really small stuff. Like think when you watch like a Wild West show or movie and they come across a small town, it's like that. Just a few buildings, maybe a ranch, nothing crazy. Towns are rough from then on. The survivors no longer had all of what was built up in the Golden Age and had to make do with whatever they could find, grow, or hunt. Elements of the past carried on. Some industries survived and others eventually revived. While the city grew, they discovered other survivors on distant planets. However, they were all in worse conditions. So the Last City remained as the last stronghold of humanity. Unfortunately, things were not just going to get better. The darkness was not the only thing to arrive in the system. Eventually, other alien races came. Some were also affected by the destruction of darkness, but sought out other places to take over, or lost their home planets in an unrecoverable degree. The Elixni were an example of this. Despite sharing a common tragedy with humanity, they feuded and fought with humans. Humans did not help much with their extremely vile attitude for anything coming from outer space arriving. They were, let's just say, having a really bad impression of things coming from space at this point. And they didn't... And let's just say peace might have been a thing that could have happened. You know, the Elixni came in, and they were already being kind of pirates, but humanity responded very harshly as well, so they were out for blood from the get-go. Let's see. So these Elixni, or Fallen, coined by humans, battled for control of pieces of Earth or whatever remained of it. And then there were other more perplexing alien races. Cabal fleets arrived, a race of conquerors who saw the now weakened solar system as a prime target for conquest. However, with these help of Guardians, a last blessing from the Traveler, they could not fully conquer the system. They did manage to make a foothold in several planets, however, and basically take control of most of the system, with the other main controlling force being a powerful fallen factions, or another, third mysterious faction called the Vex. These responded... I'm starting to not be able to talk anymore. Blah, 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 blah. These robotic aliens came from nowhere, and always seemed to make the perfect moves at the perfect time to win battles across the galaxy. They settled in small spots of planets or took over moons and converted them into strange artificial homes. The last, and perhaps deadliest of them all, were the Hive. What makes these aliens stand out were that they were serving the darkness. While they not have a direct hand in the darkness, they are aligned with it and act in its honor. Their weaponry seems almost like pure fantasy, but perhaps something so alien to us would seem like magic and voodoo anyways. They fully took over the moon and burrowed into it, and turned it into a battle station. Guardians tried to take it back, but many ended up dying. With humanity mainly stuck on Earth and in their last legs, they did what they could to repel invaders and keep moving forward. Guardians in the last city united and became a force called the Vanguard, with elite members taking charge. A government managed the last city, called the Consensus, and they worked closely with the Vanguard to ensure that they got all the resources they needed. With a few notable figures of great skill, talent, and luck, humanity began to actually push back these alien forces and reclaim what was theirs. Humanity was growing again, and the last city became an impressive home. However, things took a turn for the worse over time, and the Cabal were not the only thing being pushed lightly. The Cabal were not to be pushed lightly. A plea for reinforcements reached their home planet, and they sent their main strike force, the Red Legion. Now, a lot of you are probably familiar with the Red Legion. Some of you play Destiny 1, I know a lot of you play Destiny 2. The Red War happened, and, well, you know, crap hit the fan, you know? However, in my story, we're gonna have a big altercation with the timeline. That being, we're gonna have a lot more bad things happen. Let's just say that. It's gonna be a lot rougher. In this world, the Red War ended up being much more disastrous. We lost many more Guardians, including Ikora, Cade, and Zavala. This massive loss of life and morale made rebuilding the Vanguard after the war impossible. The last city favored pulling resources into a new and improved version of the Earth Guard, ran by the Consensus and led by General Kaisar. When the Vanguard fell and the last city was in chaos, the Concordat managed to sneak in and re-establish members to hold influence in the Consensus. Now, if anyone wondering, I didn't write this down, but the Concordat and Destiny game lore is that they're kind of like a faction that tried to take over, and they failed, and they got exiled out of the city, but now they're sneaking back in after the Red War and all that chaos. This led to the Consensus seizing power of the entire city and holding most of it, if not all of it, under their influence. Most other Consensus members did not object to these legislative actions, because I guess they were cool with getting power too. Guardians still exist, either as mercenaries or lone wolves doing what they did before, and there's even a smaller coalition that acts like a pseudo-vanguard, but there's no backing from the last city like before, so they're much less prepared for any big fights. They got no tanks, they don't have a bunch of ships, and if you have a ship, you brought your own ship. The city wasn't giving you a ship anymore. They need to bring their own weapons, and the foundries that supply the Earth Guard now, instead of the Guardians. Now we come to the 3677 incident. That's like a year. 3677. With the Vanguard gone, there was a major shakeup in the order of the last city. The consensus pretty much filed in the power vacuum. I misread that. The consensus pretty much filled in the power vacuum left behind and installed the Earth Guard as their major defense force. Many Guardians still live in the last city, despite the Vanguard not existing anymore. They still hold a strong presence. Now we go to October. Consensus members and a prominent advocate for progressive values, Xavier Woods, representing what is typically known as Sector Z of the last city, is killed. The suspected killer vanished without a trace, and all information regarding the case is buried under several layers of secrecy. November 23rd, 4:33 p.m. Sector Z has been heavily neglected, to the point where they aren't getting the resources they need to survive. Food shortages, trouble with the water, degraded infrastructure that Woods promised to fix is now left to rust. People begin to get fed up and protest. The Earth Guard are sent in, and it gets grim. They are not forced sent to deal with citizens, they deal with the enemy, and the people became the enemy. Panic rises as tensions build and people get hurt. November 23rd, 5:41 p.m. Guardians ally with the people of Sector Z and defend them from the Earth Guard. The consensus heavily dislike this and has a very harsh response against Guardians. This leads to a large-scale hostile conflict between Guardians and the Earth Guard. November 23rd, 8:12 p.m. Guardians fight back and can put up a fight against most of the Earth Guard with their powers, but Earth Guard utilizes tech from the Red War to suppress light. Earth Guard at this point have become a lot better against Guardians. They receive training against Lightborn with what they learned against the fight with the Blue Devil, a mercenary that gave them a lot of trouble earlier with light powers. Because of this, and the threat of endangering civilians nearby, most Guardians retreat to the tower as a fort. November 23rd, 10 p.m. Weapons become trained on the tower, including defense cannons designed to take on invading fleet flagships. The tower is struck and completely destroyed, nothing left behind. Many Guardians there died, with most of the remaining fleeing the city. Pretty heavy stuff. So yeah, in this world, the tower is gone, and a lot of the Guardians are gone too. Post-incident, the last city defense force is spawned on a smaller scale. The last city defense force was also spawned, but at a much smaller scale. Basically Destiny cops. The Earth Guard are more strict, have much better tools, and handle greater threats than the LCDF. However, there's still nothing like the Guardians that exist in the original timeline with, main game stuff, or before the Red War. The LCDF originate from the need for people who could handle citizens without causing another incident like the 3677 incident. They're also responsible for handling smaller scale otherworld missions and helping defend the city. So if you needed like a strike team to go kill an alien, you probably would send the Earth Guard. If you needed people to go scout out an area or just check it out, see like they are hearing something weird happening in an area on the moon, you send the LCDF. They just go check it out and maybe fight if it's like small scale. Sector Z was given a few necessary resources and is still connected to the rest of the city, but still remains mostly neglected. The people learn to rely on themselves, while criminals like the fallen gang leaders Spider and outsiders took over portions of the sector. There's still fewer Guardians in the city now. much fewer. Post-incident, peace was brought there, but it's absolutely... Sorry, I gotta clear my throat. One moment. Alright, get back to it. Post-incident, peace was brought there, but there is absolutely no support from the city to Guardians anymore. There is also many laws in place that restrict Lightborn. Only members of Team Obsidian are really allowed to use their powers in the city and have jurisdiction on last city matters. There is more tension between the two sides of the consensus that are gradually building up. The side favoring progress and technological innovation was key members secretly in a revived Ishtar Collective organization, and the side favoring tradition, the Traveler. They are scrutinized for staying faithful despite all the drama and with Guardians, but they advocate for the Traveler and the Traveler mainly. All of what the Traveler has done outweighs anything that Guardians have failed to do in their eyes. The side of progress considers the Traveler a relic of its time and wants humanity to move on without its dormant god. Whew, okay, so that's a lot of backstory. A lot of backstory. And a lot of that is going to kind of serve as just backdrop to the story being told. Kind of you know how a lot of stories will have deep lore, but they don't show that in the show except for maybe flashbacks or unrelated episodes. It's like that. Ooh, I was talking for a while. How long was I talking? That was at least 30 minutes of just non-stop talking. It whipped me out, but I'm gonna keep going. Should have grabbed the water. Oh wait, look at that. A water. There we go. The last city. Unlike other places, at least well-known and connected, this is the last actual city for people and serves as the safest well-known place for humans and soul. Walls reaching to the sky, cannons that can blast down invading fleets, and it's filled with the strongest warriors in the galaxy. Guardians are trained by the Vanguard there and treat the last city as a home base. Well, they were. I wrote this part this is one of the first things I wrote was world building. So this here is when the Vanguard was still a thing. Then the Vanguards are gone. The consensus has even more power in this world. Think of them as the US government if the checks and balances basically didn't exist. Or if the only thing stopping them from being openly the only thing stopping them was the Vanguard. So when the Vanguard was gone, they became basically in charge of the whole place. They managed basically everything in the last city, and connections off-world. They are on the same level as the Vanguard in terms of authority, while the Earthguard now, I'm going to change that. Earthguard, because the Vanguard are gone, being more on the military side against the impeding galactic threats. The consensus has authority over the LCDF and Earthguard. There are two groups in the consensus that aren't really spoken aloud but definitely exist. The side favoring progress and technological innovation, with key members secretly in a revived Ishtar Collective organization, and the side favoring tradition and the Traveler. They are scrutinized for staying faithful despite all of the drama with Guardians. I just copied and pasted that part. We don't have to go over it again. The side of progress considers it as really best time once humanity move on. The consensus, officially, and I guess in actuality, consists of prominent faction leaders, influential businessmen, and politicians of high regard. Xavier Woods was one of those politicians representing Sector Z. He was on the side of progress, an Ishtar Collective member as well, and the reason he died is because of his rivalry and conflict with other consensus members on the side of faith, particularly Trevor Graves. Just about everything you know about the Vanguard and Guardians is basically the same in the story's world, but there are more than the Vanguard in the city. Another group called the Last City Defense Force exists. This is basically an intergalactic police force. They dwell primarily in the Last City, but there are times when they're deployed off-world to investigate something. The force is primarily made up of humans and mortal beings, so they're not suited to missions like strikes or anything involving heavy alien threats. If an alien force attacks a city, they are still expected to help defend the city. In that case, you can think of them as Marines or ODST from Halo. They wear mostly black armor with advanced combat HUDs, and the last city developed weapons like Hake or Suros. There is a sub-faction of the LCDF, an elite special forces group named Obsidian, that is built entirely of Lightbearers. They respond directly to the LCDF instead of the Consensus, and most of their missions are tasks for the LCDF that they consider very dangerous or could involve rogue Lightbearers. Members of the force are either recruited new Guardians or veterans from the Vanguard. Veterans are usually taking leadership roles. The LCDF were formed after the Red War and don't have much knowledge about the Blue Devil besides basic descriptions. It's just like potential looks for them. The third group has a higher authority than the LCDF, the Earth Guard. Earth Guard are also primarily the mortal beings and have a large number of combat frames. Robots. They have a lot of robots. They handle matters the Consensus considers a high priority and are loyal strictly to the Consensus. Most of their missions are Most of their missions are related to internal matters, as in stuff happening inside the last city. However, they can serve as an elite strike team off-world as well. They are still considered weaker than a Vanguard fire team would be though. They are also used by the Consensus for dealing with rogue Guardians or Lightbearers. Between the LCDF and the Earth Guard, the latter is much more capable of facing Guardians. They're gonna be wearing like white armor, or maybe like white cloth, or... I was thinking like, the inspiration for these guys stylistically would be like Spartans. Not like Halo Spartans, but like literal historical Spartans, but like sci-fi. As for the rest of the people in the last city, there are many residents and merchants who reside there. Not everyone can enter the last city, and the entrances are guarded by the Earth Guard, and you are expected to be able to afford entry. There are sections in the last city. They are not separated by walls, but there is a clear distinction in the zones. There's the business district with buildings that pierce the sky and neon lights that fill the night. This is where most of these off-road connections connect to. Vehicles fly across the place, and there isn't much residence there. The ground level would be the suburbs, low-cost homes, and dirty streets. The majority of areas in the city are typically city residences and small shops and merchant areas. Speaking of that, near one of the walls of the city, because you know the city's got a big wall around it, like Attack on Titan. It's like that in the game too. I just felt like clarifying that for anyone wondering. Would be Sector Z or District Z. It's interchangeable. I don't really have a concrete name for it. It's District Z or Sector Z. The people say it's called that because it's the last place you want to go. All the undesirables that reside in the city usually dwell there. It's run down and a hole in the wall leaks fallen. Nobody seems to care about whoever ends up there though. As long as it doesn't reach the other zones, anything goes. Let me get a breath. Whew. I haven't talked this much in a long time. I think you started hearing my voice. I'm getting more raspy. I'll stop that, I'm sorry. There is one other notable section in the city, the center. Oh wait, there's also Midtown. Did I mention Midtown? Okay, well Midtown exists, and it's basically just like around the city. It's just like a common area with merchants and all that stuff. It's just a chill area, a chill common area, just kind of in between places. The center, however, is very unique. It's under the Traveler, and this is where the elite of the elite live. Some CEOs, but mostly Consensus members. This is also where faith in the light is the strongest. Major churches and religious aesthetics reside there. The Consensus is united officially, but it's behind the scenes as a Cold War. There are people that remain... Oh, I also forgot to mention. In the center, it's a lot more religious or faithful in. Like, you might see big buildings that have a lot more... I don't want to say Gothic architecture, but it's not as technology looking as... or as future sci-fi looking as like the business center would be, you know? They might even have like gargoyles and stuff, I don't know. Just like stuff that makes it look a lot more... like it's a church area. The consensus is united officially, but behind the scenes it's a cold war. There's people that remain very faithful to the Traveler and want to keep things the same as much as possible. There's others in favor of progression of society and abandoning reliance on the Traveler, and many of these sides re-establish the Ishtar Collective. Many on the side of progression re-establish the Ishtar Collective with the sole purpose of advanced secret research and experimentation, while molding things from the shadows to favor them. Then, there's just representatives of the You're dead. Vanguard are dead. For the biggest industries and businesses. Ooh, okay, now you're probably wondering, that's cool, Spec. That's awesome. You added a lot to the last city. Well, Bungie gave me a bit of a blank slate to work on, so it wasn't hard. It was cool. I like just making big city with cool stuff in it. But what's Sanctuary then? Well, Sanctuary is not on Earth. It's on Europa. A big snowy planet. Or is it a moon? It's a moon, I think. Sanctuary is hidden on Europa, filled with a variety of people. A large group of people living in there are refugees who can't afford to enter the last city. There's probably the second strongest area for humanity. But you would only know about it from hearsay. They're not openly connected to any established places in Seoul. Not openly, at least. Besides refugees, there is a large militia force comprised of refugees who can fight, mercenaries, and intergalactic mafia. The main residence is underground, the entrance hidden well behind Europa's snowy terrain. They have several reinforced walls and layers between the ground and the actual residence beneath to withstand any attacks. The militia force is called the Wolves, and they comprise of refugees who can fight, and the mercenaries are mafia grouped into the military by General Victor and his inner circle. The Sanctuary is at odds with the Consensus. The Consensus would want nothing more than this ever-growing stronghold not allied with them to vanish, even if all the refugees are inside are lost too. Village of the Shard Clan. Somewhere on Nessus, there's a small rural village comprised of normal people. The village isn't really connected to the rest of the system. In fact, ever since it collapsed, they aren't really aware of anything else going on off Nessus. They're basically what people IRL would today would be like, but on Nessus. They are also more dated in terms of technology and societal progress. Think of like societies from the 1600s. I'm thinking like, I don't know, Vikings. I think it might be earlier, but like basically like early English societies, I think it's gonna be a mix. Like we could have like early Japan or early Vikings or knights and stuff like that. We could have like a bit of a mix, just kind of like elements of each that wouldn't clash with each other. And also there's another one, the Phoenix Clan. They could be like a different aesthetic. They could both be like 1600s or before societies, but they'll be like different versions. They're more dated. Although they seem dated, they're still strong. They have sci-fi bows and glaives, whatever, and the same kinds you see in game. They primarily operate with hunters and gatherers, exploring the planet while others stay in the village and take care of people there. Their main governing force there would be an elected council of trusted people and a clan leader. The village is relatively small, so they don't necessarily need certain representatives. Their main threat is local Vex and the Phoenix Clan. They also have one prized warrior, Arisen, who wears an arc staff. Village of the Phoenix Clan. Now this one's got a little more to it. The Phoenix Clan is a group of people that diverted from the Shard Clan after a traumatic event that left the village in civil turmoil. Many years after the collapse, humans found a shard with tremendous power. It made their farms grow in surplus, and there was even one person in the village who became risen with the power of a void bow. However, a small conflict near the shard resulted in a disaster as something made the shard react unfavorably, with a large portion of the village residents vanishing without a trace. The risen was also taken away. They were never found, and a lot of remaining villagers blamed the shard for it, while others still wanted to remain faithful to the shard and try to bring people back somehow. The group that was angry at the shard gave up on trying to find the vanished residents and left the clan, establishing a new clan focused on rebirth and progressing to a better tomorrow. The Shard Clan eventually had a new risen name, and the Phoenix Clan holds high resentment toward him. Wait, the Shard clan eventually had a new Risen arrive. Basically, a new Guardian arrived. And the Phoenix clan does not like him because they partially blame the previous Risen for the villagers vanishing. A very long amount of time passes, and generations come and go with the knowledge of why the villagers dislike each other being kind of lost, but the emotions stay. So basically, present day, the Phoenix clan and the Shard clan got beef, but they don't even know why anymore. They just don't like each other. The only people that will probably know about it are like the elders of each clan. The Phoenix clan is more connected to the outside system. They have flown off-world and have used advanced weaponry like guns. Cybernetic upgrades are encouraged, although most are still wary of getting anything near the Vex. They are at odds with the Vex and the Shard clan. There is no war, but battles between them are not unheard of. There's no war between the Shard clan and the Phoenix clan, but they will have battles with each other, like skirmishes, or they'll see each other and they'll have beef and they'll fight. But it's not a war. Right now, at least. The main government of their clan is a main leader family and an inner circle. Each son or daughter becomes the next clan leader. The church is sweet business. This is an abandoned area in the European Dead Zone, with a rundown church as the main landmark for it. There's no connections to other areas, but a few come there for refuge, rest, or to meet others. Specialist has it as a second home of sorts. And whenever he meets people with no place to go, he offers them refuge there. A lot of Spec's profits go towards this spot. Basically, if Spec does a job, there's a chance that a lot of his profits are going to go to that area. Oh boy. Relics of Power. Do you guys like MacGuffins? You like that stuff? You a big fan of MacGuffins? We got MacGuffins. We got all kinds of stuff. Here we go. Relics of Power. There are a few relics of power from before and after the collapse. Here's a brief description on each and where they originate. The Dark Blade. It's pretty cliche, but it's earnest notoriety. The thing can kill a ghost like it's nothing. If a light wielder gets stabbed by it, their light fades away. Yeah, that means a stab is basically fatal if the wielder lands it in the right place. The Dark Blade has its own unique power too. The wielder literally cannot die if the sword isn't broken or left behind. So as long as you're holding onto that thing, you're immortal. They can't kill you. They can stab you. They can you can cut things off. I think maybe if you, no, honestly, I think as long as the sword isn't broken or left behind, you're good. And by left behind, I don't mean like you get your arm cut off. I mean like you drop the sword and you're like, I'm done. I'm good. So yeah, either the sword gets broken or you willfully leave the sword behind, you're basically immortal. In the story, it starts out in a pyramid ship. The pyramid ship ends up getting led by a rogue corrupted guardian with the intent to drive the ship into the last city and do as much damage as possible. He fails to reach the city thanks to Obsidian, the special forces sent by LCDF. They confiscate the blade and it's stored in the last city restricted armor building. Then when the Victor's team strikes the last city and takes the blade with them, Harry is given it to keep himself alive, although he's basically a walking skeleton. You're probably wondering, hey Spec, who the hell's Harry? Who's Victor's team? What is all this? Look man, we're just going in order of things I wrote. We got characters down here, and we got like a lot of characters down here, and we got events of the main story happening here. We got a lot going on, but I'm just like going over it when things one at a time, okay? The Light Blade is pretty much what you expect. It's the opposite of the Dark Blade, and it gives the power to its wielder. It can act as a battery, but if a Guardian tries to utilize its full power, or use it for too long, they'll get overwhelmed. If you don't have any light though, you schmo, then maybe you can use it as your own battery for light powers. The Light Blade was hidden deep in Nessus, and originated from a small tree of life. Basically the Traveler made that. The Nine end up getting to it before anyone else. And, well, this is at least one idea I have for the story, is that they give it to Spec near the end of the story. The Temporal. The Temporal, why isn't this, that's weird. There we go. It is stored in the Vault of Glass on Venus. The powerful Vex mine anticipates Vex's arrival and entraps him in a looping simulation in a Vex labyrinth. A Vex maze. The Vex mind can follow him into every point of time he jumps into and acts like a narrator to him. The mind intends to trap him there forever, making Spec follow its created stories to studying his behavior. Now, basically, what the temporal is like, the Vex mind is like controlling time in the vaulted glass and doing all that jazz. But you can, if you like defeated the Vex mind, you could take that piece out of him, and that temporal is now a thing you can use to control space and time. A little overpowered, but it's also kind of limited to where you can use it, I think. Is it? Maybe it won't be. Maybe it's just overpowered as hell, but don't worry. It will fit in the story. The Shard. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. It fell into Nessus a very long time ago. I don't know why the Google Doc decided to make that Thorna, but not trying to rehash the whole story. But yeah, somehow a tiny piece of the Traveler got broken off during the collapse and landed in Nessus' jungle biome. Maybe it has something to do with the circumstances of his creation, but really the only way it operates is a mystery. It's responsible for the creation of an alternate reality, another world so to speak, and that as far as we know spans the entirety of Nessus. It could even go further than that. People can be transported to this alternate reality if the Shard receives a strong enough catalyst, like a Guardian uses his powers. Okay, I wrote a lot for characters, or at least some of them, so I'm just going to briefly go over the characters. We got Specialist, the detective. Cassidy, he's a bounty hunter that becomes friends with Spec. Selena, she's a friend of Cassidy and Spec, and works at the saloon Cassidy operates. Captain Harvey, he's the captain of the Earth Guard, team that's deployed to track down the Blue Devil. Grindor, blah blah, whatever, he might even have that name anymore, but that's the name we had when we noted it down. I put him in the story. He's a friend of Spec, and he meets him after he becomes a detective. He's a Titan in clad white armor with a Sentinel Shield-like technique and Hammer of Soul-like technique. Basically, he's kind of like... Spec has like a few friends connections, and Grindor is kind of like the guy that works heavily with the Church of Sweet Business. Like, he's the most involved with the Church of Sweet Business, and he's kind of like Spec's connection to that. Even though Spec like owns the thing and funds the thing a lot of times, Grindor is more involved with the people there. Kind of like a right-hand guy there. Lieutenant Watson is a captain of the LCDF, and he meets Spec in the last city. General Kaisar is the leader of the Earth Guard, and answers only to the consensus. Can you tell I'm starting to struggle with talking? I'm starting to get caught on my tongue. I'm not able to talk anymore. It's getting a little frustrating. I think it's because like, maybe I need water or something? Or maybe I'm just not used to talking this much. Dr. Tez, a friend of Spec, who initially hired him on a task, but like she basically becomes like a reliable scientist friend. Sweaty. He's a robot. We're gonna leave it at that for now. The Professional. Professional is like this really overpowered dude who is probably the strongest guy in the story. And he's like a mercenary, but he's also like super duper strong and mysterious. And well, his role in the story is going to be determined, but right now he's got like a lot going on. Let's just say that. And we're not going to really learn about it a lot, but he's kind of like someone you're going to be throughout the story speculating on. Who is this guy? What is his ultimate goal? Stuff like that. Ninja. The robot ninja bounty hunter. They're built by the robot is built by the Ishtar Collective, the new one, and it's basically just kind of like sent to clean up loose ends or do jobs for the Ishtar Collective. It's a very deadly robot. Alec Kears is the CEO of Amalon Industries. He's gonna be giving Spec a little bit of trouble. Victor Mori. He's the leader of Sanctuary, and he's got stasis powers. Him and Spec got beef. 6. He's a mercenary hired by Victor, and he's got very, very good aim. He's also got a few other skills, but I'm going to leave it at that for simplicity's sake. Hyde. Hyde is a mad scientist who tries to research the darkness. He also worked for Victor. Drexus. Drexus is a road-like bear who takes control of a pyramid ship. He's the guy that tried to crash the pyramid ship into the last city. Gavin. Gavin he's a chill guy, honestly. I like Gavin. He's a member of Victor's inner circle, and he was initially a militia member that tried to kill Spec but failed. Basically, he got trapped in the what's it called, the Shattered Realm. The Shattered Realm, whatever it's called. He got trapped in there, and he actually learned how to harness the powers in there, and now he can just bring his own pocket Shattered Realm wherever he goes. Kind of overpowered, but he works with Victor. He's a nice guy though. He's cool. The One-Eyed Man, a strange, mysterious dude who's very, very strong. Works for Victor. He doesn't talk really. He also wears the Dark Blade. The Phoenix. From the clan of the Phoenix, he's a warrior with biotic enhancement and a strong sense of honor. He's the next in line to be the leader of the clan too. Yuli is the first resident from Nessus village who wields the Void Bow. Thor is the second risen from Nessus village, the Ronin. He stays with the clan of the Shard and defends the Shard in the clan. Kane. He's a friend of Thor, who ends up betraying the village because he believes in the progress and he thinks that the clan of the Shard is bad. He ends up not liking them much. He also wants to become more powerful, and he doesn't think that he's going to do it in that clan. Barry Steels. Okay, look, man. You can give me crap for naming these guys the way I did, but come on, he's a bandit. Who would have thought? He's an outlaw, an expert thief. I like Barry Steels, okay? Maybe I'll change the name to Barry something else? Barry Delight, maybe? But, he's a character. Marcus First, a member of Barry's small gang. He's gonna have like a lot to do in this story. He's gonna, I think, eventually get to Sanctuary, and he's going to be really important for developing Victor as a character. Rook. Oh, we're getting into Team Obsidian. Okay. So Rook, aka Obsidian 5, is a rookie Obsidian member from the LCDF. He's a titan with a lot of speed, and that's like his big thing, is he's very fast and strong. He's gonna have a dynamic with Castle, the leader, where like he's kind of like learning from the leader. Castle, aka Obsidian 1, is a Sentinel Titan. He's the captain of Obsidian as well. He's very bulky. He's got very bulky armor. Bishop, aka Obsidian 2. Second in command with Team Obsidian. Living up to her name, she's very faithful to the Traveler, and she has a sniper rifle she uses. She takes him out with a prayer. I just thought it'd be cool. I like in movies where like they have like the sniper and just like a prayer before he shoots someone. I don't know, I just thought that was neat. Pilgrim, aka Obsidian 3. The ace pilot of Team Obsidian. It's gonna be either he or she. Keeps a sidearm with him. He's not unfamiliar with other weapons. So like, this person would be good with weapons, but they're mainly a pilot. Knight, aka Obsidian 4, is a stealth and recon specialist, Void Night Stalker. Obsidian relies on him to get past the enemy line and recon dangerous places. He's one of the stronger members, so he can be trusted with going alone and more dangerous places in return. Until Rook joined, he was the newest member. Jesse was Specialist as Titan Mentor and introduced him to Sweet Business. Alexander is a member of Jesse's fire team. Xavier Woods. We already talked about this guy a lot, but I'll just say it one more time. He was a member of the Ishtar Collective. He represented Sector Z, and he died, which left Sector Z in a bad spot. Trevor Graves was a member of the Consensus who leaned more on the traditional policies and remained faithful to the Traveler till the end. He was very much against the ideas of humanity leaving the Traveler behind, and was vocal against his rival Xavier Woods. Got to a point where he hires Grey, the Blue Devil, to kill Woods' family as a force of hand, but Grey refuses, and Graves ends up getting his own hands dirty by killing Woods. Graves is killed by Grey. The Magician, a reoccurring character that annoys and angers Spec every time they meet. Slick, the Full Metal Noodleist. Yeah, he's an owner and proud cook of Slicked Eats and Treats in Midtown. Roger Stevenson's? Oh, this is like the one I had. This is the last guy I added to the story so far. He's the head guard of the Ashtar Collective secret base. He's basically got beef with Six, and Six has beef with him. Ooh, okay. How far have we gotten so far in this thing? We've been talking for a while. We've been talking for an hour. Let me think. How much more do we want to talk? We've gotten, I think, a lot of the world building and character introductions out of the way. The rest of this is going to be like just telling the story. Like the actual story. I'm really tired though of all that talk. We've talked for like straight up an hour. My god. I think maybe it would be a good idea to call it for now. Ooh, we can call it for now. And this stream could basically serve as anyone who's curious about just like the lore, or the backdrop, or the world, and all that stuff. They can check out this stream. And next stream we do will be a stream talking about the actual story, like the events that take place involving Specialist Feature. No, he doesn't go around being called Specialist Feature. Okay. Guys, it's been real. I know a few of you joined. I noticed a few people actually joined and listened to that, so I'm thankful for that. I'm gonna be probably doing a stream at least on Wednesday for more animation stuff, and I might do another stream this week to cover the events in my story time. So yeah, I'm gonna head out. It's been real. It's been great. I don't know what to say, honestly. Get out of here. What are you still doing here?